A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. President Bola Tinubu returned to the country during the week following his state visit to Brazil. The president had arrived in Brazil on Sunday to kick off his two-day visit to the South American country. He held a one-on-one meeting with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Brasilia, where he emphasized the need to strengthen diplomatic and economic ties between Nigeria and Brazil. On his official X handle, President Tinubu described his meeting with the Brazilian president as a revisitation of the long-standing relationship between the two countries, expressing commitment to expanding collaboration in key sectors such as agriculture, energy, trade, and culture.
We've concluded on a number of issues, such as technology transfer. We have the youth population in Nigeria that is restless, willing, and energetic, brilliant, ready to learn, ready to work, ready to exchange ideas. We should utilize the population. We should utilize the opportunity. We should utilize those people that we have, the assets that we have. Our aviation industry, it will blossom. And aviation will propel additional opportunity for business to grow, culture to succeed, and everyone to benefit, collaborating and cooperating to do what is right for our people. I promise you that Brazil and Nigeria is here to grow the economy for the people, by the people, and for the people.
President Tinubu also met with the president of the Brazilian Senate and the National Congress, the president of the Chamber of Deputies, and the president of the Supreme Federal Court. While in Brazil, President Tinubu commended Nigeria's capital market's remarkable growth since he assumed office more than 2 years ago. President Tinubu was making the statement at an event in which he hosted the NGX Group Board and SEC Director General in Brazil. He noted the phenomenal rise in market capitalization and increased trading activity, which have broadened investment opportunities for Nigerians and international investors. He described the market's performance as a clear reflection of investor confidence in his administration's reforms and bold economic measures. Perhaps the most significant outcome of the president's visit to Brazil is the direct flight taken by the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Energy, Agriculture and Trade, all members of the president's delegation as they returned to Lagos. There were several other agreements signed between Nigeria and Brazil, including frameworks for joint ventures in renewable energy and agricultural development, as well as knowledge-sharing initiatives in technology and infrastructure.
We have just landed on the first maiden flight between Brazil and Lagos. As you know, Mr. President was in Brazil and he made a commitment together with President Lula da Silva of Brazil to have direct flight connection between Nigeria and Brazil. In that agreement, Air Peace was designated as one of the carriers that has been approved to undertake this kind of shuttle, and then there's also Caverton, I think, for cargo. So we all decided to join, courtesy of the chairman of Air Peace. He took us gratis, all from Brazil here to Lagos. This is part of the fulfillment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, opening up Nigeria, opening up the world to Nigeria.
What we are seeing today is the first fruits of the diplomatic shuttle of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to Brazil. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his wisdom, has decided to open up our economic relations, diplomatic relations, trade relations again with Brazil. Brazil is the biggest economy in South America, and of course, Nigeria is considered the biggest economy in Africa. So connecting these two economies was very key to both presidents. The trade between both countries plummeted from $10 billion to $2 billion. And that is how, in 10 years, and that was how the things got sour. But with this, of course, relations will pick up again. And key to this, key to the achievement of all the agreements we signed is the connectivity between both countries.
At the end of his visit, President Tinubu also took time to meet with Nigerians living in Brazil. He had a wonderful time with them. Perhaps the excitement from the Brazil visit has settled. Let's get on with the impact now. I have joining me public affairs analyst and National Secretary, Nigeria Union of Journalists, Achike Chude. Achike, thanks for joining us on the program today.
It's always a pleasure, Amarachi.
I just want to point out to our viewers that we did reach out to some of the officials who were members of the president's delegation to Brazil, and we got no confirmation about their availability this week for the program. Anyway, Achike, it's great to have you here. Now, President Tinubu made visits to two countries. There was Japan, there was also Brazil. First, he attended the TCAT summit in Yokohama, and then had a state visit in Brazil, in which he seemed to have made a visit to Brazil, which gained a lot of traction. We have a traveling president on our hands. Was it absolutely necessary that the president makes these trips, whether this time or any other time in Nigeria? And I'm saying this because I know that there were a number of domestic issues the president should have addressed before leaving.
Yeah, well, obviously they have talked about the virtues of these trips and the things that are to be gained by them. He's not his predecessor was always embarking on such trips. And even when people complained about the frequency of the trips and how much was being spent on the trips, they tended to give us the impression that Nigeria was in a dire need of the potential fruits that would come from the trips. Obviously, you talk economics, you're talking about investments, and all that. So it's essentially about the economic dynamics, hopefully positive economic dynamics that will follow such trips. And then the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is also doing the same thing. Frequently, he's been on the move, and perhaps if you look at it from a one perspective, it would mean that he's very, very serious about the expected fruits from these trips. And obviously, he believes that Nigeria needs a lot of help from outside. But then again, you look at the context under which these trips have been undertaken, even under the former president, late Muhammad Buhari, we've seen the same context of insecurity pervading the political land, the territorial landscape of Nigeria. Just before he embarked on this trip, about 16 people, had been killed in a part of this country. And throughout the duration of his stay between Japan and Brazil, about 70 Nigerians, no less than that, had been killed. And these are the reported, cases of violence in the country. So the question you ask yourself is, in the midst of this monumental carnage to human lives and property, is the president's trip justified? So of course, the jury is still out there. A lot of people will tell you that no president that is actually very serious about the lives of his citizens would want to leave the country when this kind of atrocities are being committed. We all know that some presidents, the former British president, Prime Minister Cameron, was on a bilateral visit in France at the time when Rigby, a policeman, was stabbed to death in the United Kingdom, and he rushed back home. If that's just one life, that was lost. And so we've had such situations when you have negative monumental incidences happening in some countries, and the presidents feel an obligation to go back. But obviously, perhaps the president's understanding of the dire economic need of the country is such that the loss of this number of human lives might be small compared to the gains that might that might benefit from a serious economic investment by countries like Brazil and Japan. So we look at, we just, leave it there, but that is the optics. I mean, as a president, I'm not sure the optics are exactly, right. This is essentially what it's all about. So he went on a trip essentially for economic reasons, and of course had a lot of discussions with leaders from various countries, especially Brazil. Brazil was actually of greater importance, and like you said, that is what elicited a lot of responses and interest because of the historical linkage between Nigeria and Brazil. A former of course, you know that Brazil, was actively involved in during the period of slave trade. Taking a lot of Nigerians were taken outside of this country to Brazil. And that's why you have a teeming Nigerian population in Brazil. Some of the names, a lot of the names in places like many places, parts of Lagos, are Brazilian, streets are named after, from Brazilian names. A lot of the people from these places also Brazilian names, some of the citizens of Lagos, especially Ogun State and others. So Nigeria has a very rich history, of communication with Brazil at the cultural level, most especially, and it would appear now maybe, at the political level. And don't forget again, lastly, that these are two giants of the global south. That is Brazil is a lead member of the
BRICS.
it's of BRICS, and then Nigeria also obviously has ambitions from what we have been told with regards to joining BRICS. So when you look at it, there are some things that tie both countries together significantly.
Indeed, there are a number of things, and I'm glad that you pointed them out. And again, the president talked about, the partnership between Brazil and Nigeria that dates all the way back to, as you said, the pre-colonial times. Speaking to the Nigerian community, which is a very vibrant one in Brazil, as you also rightly pointed out. He promised to fast track Nigeria's development through technology and food security, aligning with the success models of countries such as Brazil. Then he also mentions that once upon a time, Nigeria and Brazil stood on the same level. But today, Brazil is ahead of Nigeria in technology and food systems. He also says we must ask ourselves, what does Brazil have that we, Nigeria, do not have? And let me ask you that question. What does Brazil have that Nigeria does not?
I think one of them is respect that comes from having achieved your national objectives. I think Brazil, to a very large extent, has been able to do that. Brazil is a very much respected country in the international community. If you look at, for instance, the various areas where Nigeria, signed agreements with Brazil in the areas of aviation, agriculture, science, oil, and trade, Brazil is a giant in those areas. Of course, you look at what the Petrobras has been trying to do, has been doing over the years. In fact, it is said that the restructuring of the NNPC is study or stems from a study of the successes of Petrobras, as well as the Saudi Arabia Aramco of Saudi Arabia. So NNPC over the years has been trying to model itself, after the successes of these two, oil giants, and they have been able to do exceedingly well in those areas. So I think there's a belief that there is a lot that needs to be learned from these two organizations operating in the two countries that I mentioned, Saudi Arabia and then Brazil, of course. Brazil is also a giant in the field of agriculture, and their mechanized farming is, I wouldn't say second to none, but it is highly sophisticated, highly developed, and then of course, you look at, other areas, science and technology, Brazil is many notches above that of Nigeria. So if there's any learning that should be done by, these countries, I think Nigeria has a lot of learning to do from Brazil. And from what you have just said, quoting the president wants to know what it is that Brazil has been able to do, what it is that Brazil stands for that Nigeria has not been able, to stand for. And so it means that simply that Nigeria is looking up to Brazil to learn a lot of things, from Brazil. And so you find out that this relationship on the basis of this agreement, whether it has to do with the bilateral agreement that Nigeria, has signed with Brazil, whether it is in the area of agriculture or in the area of trade, in the area of science and all that, Brazil is clearly ahead of Nigeria. So, like I said, Nigeria is the country that will be doing the learning. And so, I mean, it's also refreshing to hear that Petrobras wants to come to Nigeria. Petrobras, if they actually do come to Nigeria, they would be doing that, against the trend where some of the oil majors in this country have been closing shop and divesting their investments and selling them to local entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but Petrobras is returning to the country, actually left in 2020, driven by a number of factors, I understand, including financial
Yes.
struggles and also domestic corruption. That's why they left in 2020. But under President Luis
Yeah.
Inacio Lula da Silva, they're returning to Nigeria. So I guess that there is some goodwill and trust there. And again, to confirm some of the things you said, I did speak with a former Brazilian ambassador to Nigeria, I beg your pardon, consul general, and some of the things you're saying, yes, he did confirm Brazil is ahead with mechanized farming, and that they're also trying to incorporate into Nigeria. Petrobras's return is imminent. That must be good news for those in the oil sector. And I remember asking an analyst during the week about this, and what the gains will be for the ordinary Nigerian, knowing that Petrobras is returning. Some of the achievements of this visit. What would that mean to ordinary people who are not watching television, who are not listening to the radio, who would probably be out there wondering what's really going on? What's all the talk about President Tinubu's visit to Brazil?
Yeah, well, I think more than I mean, what will likely happen in the oil sector? You'd say the area one should be looking at in terms of benefits to Nigerians should be in the area of agriculture. Obviously, I don't forget that at a time about 70% of farmers were involved in agriculture in the rural areas in this country. And then, but again, even that itself, because that is where we have issues of course, food inflation, and importation of certain food items, though we have been trying to discourage that for quite some time. And so if you have large scale, mechanized farming of the sort that Brazil has been doing, perhaps it is going to help to bring down the cost of food. But it's not as easy as that, because you're talking about the crisis. I mean, what part of the country do you call the food basket of Nigeria? It's in Benue State. You're also having large-scale agriculture in many parts of northern Nigeria. Those parts of the country are under serious cases of insecurity. And so you're not going to get the Brazilians to come in and engage in theaters of in agricultural production, in theaters of conflict. And so there is a bit of a paradox. There's a bit of a problem, because that is where you have the vast expanses of land that need to be that need serious intensive farming, such as the type that the Brazilians do. But they are not going to be able to do that for as long as the issues of insecurity, continues to thrive in those places. Then the other things again, you want to bring them in, that you must make sure that you have adequate storage facilities, for agricultural produce. We have seen how large quantities, vast quantities of produce are daily continuously wasted because we do not have enough storage facilities for them. Is the Brazilian part of the agreement? Does it incorporate the building of adequate storage facilities for farm produce? We don't know. We also don't know about the issues of irrigation. In many parts of the country, you cannot have a thriving, agricultural sector if you do not have the issues of irrigation. It's not in place, and that's why in those days we used to have the river basin authorities. It was for the purpose of irrigation practices that some of these basin authorities were set up. They have all collapsed. Then you're also talking about road network. To the farms and out of the farms. Are you going to expect in the rural areas? Are you going to expect the Brazilians to come in and also develop our rural road infrastructure for the purpose of affecting, moving farm materials effectively away to the marketplace? So these are issues that that need to be discussed. So it's one thing to have this agreement on paper, but in practical terms, what's going to happen? Then again, you also look at even the bilateral air agreement, which is also good, all the way from Brazil, from Nigeria to Brazil and the rest. Well, we had won an agreement some time ago with Jamaica. What has happened? That one has collapsed. In fact, it is said that from in the past, from 1950 to date, about 179 airlines were registered in Nigeria. As of today, 97 of them, 95 of them have collapsed completely. So it's good to have this arrangement, but do we have the capacity to be able to maintain this agreement? These are some of the things that I guess that perhaps they need to iron out.
Yeah, and I was expecting this particular issue to also be raised, but I guess because it has been raised sometime this year, I think in May, Nigeria and Brazil did sign an MOU to combat drug trafficking. It's been a huge problem for both countries. And I think for many years, even the chief executive officer of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabirawa, has been on top of this. She's intervened a number of times for Nigerians who have been arrested and have been sent to jail for drug trafficking and all of that. What do you think, do you think that this should be revisited by both countries? Should it have come up, in the conversations? I know that it's a bit of a slight on Nigeria, but surely this was an opportunity for both sides to really, talk about issues that affected both of them, right?
Yes, I agree. I guess that we need much more information from the side of the government, on other issues that might have been discussed that might not have made the headlines. These things happen. Sometimes you have these back discussions and they might not talk about it and all that. Obviously, Nigeria also has a fairly reasonable population of people, of citizens in Brazilian prisons. For it's been happening. It's been like that for quite some time. A lot of them have also been, convicted on drug charges. And the reason is simple, that for a very long time, for years, Nigeria continued to be Brazil, a transit point for drug trafficking. And that has involved, Nigerians. And so I guess that perhaps that might have come up in the discussions. I don't know until maybe you get to discuss with some of these government representatives if they are willing to talk about some of these things, and then maybe get more information with regards to that. But obviously, we should be asking. It's not as if the Nigerian government will be asking for amnesty on behalf of these people. Obviously, they have committed a crime. They have broken the laws, Brazilian laws, and then they should face for whatever consequences. But sometimes it's not out of the way to also find out about the welfare of your citizens, not just the citizens that are doing well within the country, but even also those that are being incarcerated to also find out under what conditions that they are being incarcerated. So it's not out of place.
Ajike, thank you so much. You have answered as much as you can. You're not an ambassador. You're not the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. Neither are you the Minister of Foreign Affairs either. But I appreciate your thoughts, taking a stab at these issues. Thank you again for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Marci. Yeah.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, has participated in the 5th Singapore Africa Ministerial Exchange visit held in Singapore from August 26th to 28th. At least 14 ministers and deputy ministers of foreign affairs attended the summit, mainly from Africa. Ambassador Tuga paid a courtesy visit to the Singaporean Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, M.E. Lawrence Wong, where they discussed deepening Africa-Singapore cooperation. Meanwhile, the African ministers participated in the opening session of the 8th Africa-Singapore Business Forum, which coincided with the ministerial meetings. The forum was hosted by Ghanaian President John Mahama, who delivered a keynote address. CANUK has dismissed reports in the social media space pertaining to extortion by officials at the Nigerian High Commission for the processing of emergency travel certificates and passports. The issue is being circulated on social media by a Dr. Chido who alleges that an ETC was issued at an inflated cost of £132. CANUK, however, says the official charges remain the same, stressing that the ETC is not an ordinary paper, but a specially printed security-enhanced document embedded with the Nigerian coat of arms and designed for international recognition by border and airport authorities. Chairman of the association, Mr. Ili Maisanda, stressed the association's commitment to supporting the Nigerian High Commission to ensuring transparency, accountability, and improved service delivery to the Nigerian community in the UK. The 2025 Shanghai Cooperation Organization Security Forum is ongoing in Tianjin, China, drawing about 20 world leaders. Chinese media reports that the ongoing SCO summit shoulders the important mission of building consensus among all parties and stimulating momentum in cooperation. Among the most notable guests at the two-day summit is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is on his first visit to China since 2018 after years of difficult relations in the wake of Indian and Chinese troops clashing in 2020 at a disputed Himalayan border. Also attending is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who faces an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court (ICC) in 2023 over the war in Ukraine. China is not a member state of the ICC and is not a party to the Rome Statute that it founded, so the court has no authority in the country.
And that's the program today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Remember, you can leave your thoughts and comments on the comment section on YouTube or on any of the social media handles showing on your screen. See you next time.